Related to thyroid issues that many people face today. In fact, one of the statistics that I have read says that 1 in 10 working people end up with some or the other thyroid disorder, which is a very, very large number. So, talking to Dr. Saurabha Bhatt. Dr. Saurabha, welcome. If you can just give a little bit of a brief background to your work and your experience, please.
Hello everyone. I'm Dr. Saurabha. I have done my MD medicine and then my DM in endocrinology. So I basically I worked after my MD medicine, and for the past few years I've been working as an endocrinologist. I'm basically my main patients include diabetic patients. So endocrinology deals with the hormone diseases. So endocrine organs are organs which empty their secretion directly into the blood, not into a duct like a pipe. So one of the main endocrine organs is the pancreas, which releases insulin, and the thyroid. So basically thyroid disorders and diabetes, and of course other endocrine problems. So it's a relatively newer field. Patients are not yet familiar, but more diseases coming up my area now.
Thyroid related issues that a lot of people face, and it is also the time of the corona pandemic right now, and you have a lot of scare, you have a lot of worry and anxiety that people are generally going through. So let me ask you my first question, doctor. One, is there a high risk of getting COVID and contracting this coronavirus if you already have a thyroid disorder, either hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism or any other disease that you have?
Due to the new coronavirus, it's a novel strain of the coronavirus. The data is not yet so robust, but with whatever data that we are getting now, there isn't anything to say that thyroid patients are more susceptible. However, the experts who have done research, it has shown that some hypothyroid patients, if they are not euthyroid, that is, they are not taking their medications adequately, in the adequate dose, if they are, say, undertreated, or in case of hyperthyroid patients, if they are not treated adequately, the thyroid hormone levels are on the higher side, they can be more easily susceptible to both the infection as well as its complications. Regarding the rarer thyroid diseases like the thyroid cancer, so in these patients, they are, as it is, immunosuppressed. So the observation has shown that, especially when they have lung metastasis, means advanced thyroid cancer, which has commonly metastasizes to lungs. One of the most common organs which it spreads to is the lungs. So who have lung metastasis are more susceptible to COVID pneumonia.
It is interesting that you say that, given that this novel coronavirus is so new, there are hardly any proper quantitative studies that can establish any fact currently. It will still take some time for all these studies to come about and prove either comprehensively or disprove. But we do see a ton of material out there that really talks about coronavirus and how it interacts with others, etc. So, are these really fake news, or is there merit in whatever we are getting through a ton of forwards and posts?
Coronavirus, the DNA of the coronavirus. So that itself is a giveaway, because coronavirus is an RNA virus. Okay, so the nuclear material is an RNA. That itself is a giveaway for that particular article. So if it's from a standard website, which assures you that it is, relevant information, then it is right. But susceptibility in patients and prospective longitudinal studies are, practically it is not yet happened, because it's new now. So that will take some time. But regarding the structure, how it behaves, the symptomatology, but it's still in the evolving phase. Like recently, news is coming in like they can have gastrointestinal symptoms. Patients can present with diarrhea, vomiting, so not just the respiratory symptoms. So,
One of the issues that people are facing, and one of the biggest worries that a lot of people have today, is whether there is enough thyroid medicine in India for people to not hoard and worry. So, as a doctor, I know you will be in touch with a lot of pharmaceutical companies, but is there any reason to worry, panic about availability of basic thyroid medications, given that this pandemic is now going and the lockdown getting extended every time?
But since thyroid medication is usually necessary for a long term, people naturally tend to have a stock of medicines. That is why what I tend to tell most patients, stock at least, like for hypothyroidism, thyroxine comes in a bottle which contains at least 100 tablets. So it lasts for about more than 3 months. So that is it. And then over the past 2 months, like through this lockdown, I've been contacting patients. So I don't think there is any worry. None of them have actually reported. I'm in touch with all the some of the medical representatives and all that. So there isn't really a need to worry. So thyroxine, at least there are a lot of companies, lot of brands, and there is wide availability. Same thing with the neomercazole, which is commonly prescribed for hyperthyroidism. So I don't think there's anything to panic or shortage of medication.
Thank you, doctor. I think that is a very important message to give out to people who will otherwise worry even more. Doctor, let me just go back now, given that I've asked you a couple of questions on COVID, but let's get back to basic thyroid and thyroid disorder questions. And these are really a compilation of a lot of questions that people most frequently search either on Google or any one of the other search engines that you have. Or these are questions that indeed even our own base of customers at MedLife have sent across to us as the most important and pertinent questions that they would like to know answers to. So, doctor, first question that a lot of people have asked is saying, what leads to thyroid disorders? How am I supposed to ensure that if I know what leads to thyroid issues in the first place, I am able to basically stop that and cut the probability of getting thyroid issues?
Most common thyroid disorder that we see in the general public is hypothyroidism. That is, to be more specific, primary hypothyroidism. That is, your thyroid gland is not producing enough thyroid hormone. Everybody has a thyroid gland in the neck which produces thyroid hormone. That is required on a daily basis, but then it's not producing enough. So the most common cause, that is 90% of the cases of primary hypothyroidism, are autoimmune. In the sense, body's antibodies, which are supposed to, antibodies in the blood which are supposed to fight infection, they tend to act on the body's own tissues and start destroying the body's own tissue. So it recognizes thyroid hormone producing cells as foreign, so it starts destroying them. So there is of course a strong genetic background. So if there's a family history, it's not necessary that the relative should get it, or it's not necessary that a person who gets it has to have a family background of thyroid diseases, but the tendency is known, familial tendency. And stress, of course, plays a major role. There is recent research coming in that long working hours is increasing the chances of what is called subclinical hypothyroidism. Subclinical in the sense it's borderline. So I see a lot of patients coming with a borderline low thyroid hormone level, which manifests as a slightly high TSH. So it's picked up like that. Regarding this is the most common. Of course, there are iatrogenic causes. In a sense, someone who has already had a surgery, for some thyroid nodule swelling, so they become hypothyroid. If there's radiation exposure, a particular type of lymphoma, that is Hodgkin's lymphoma, a type of tumor. So those patients, but probably again radiation exposure is supposed to be a factor. There are congenital causes. When it comes to children, there's a developmental defect. Like there are some children are born, babies are born without a thyroid. There are multiple factors, but the most common, it's not exactly preventable. So it has to be just picked up. You can't stop it from happening. You can be only more aware, and some people, when it's borderline, we just follow it up. Of course, the female gender has a higher probability of getting hypothyroidism. Mostly we can't do much about it, but when hyperthyroid patients are not exactly mismanaged, we can't really say, but some patients need surgery. So You can't exactly prevent it, but there you already know you're going to get it. So it's like that. Even when hyperthyroid patients are treated with radioactive iodine, like that radioactive iodine liquid is supposed to destroy the thyroid gland, which is producing excess thyroid hormone. So in that case, the optimal dose needs to be given. That is also quite difficult to calculate. But yeah, you basically can't do much to prevent it.
By what age can you expect somebody to start showing this hypothyroidism as a disorder, let's say?
Yeah, right. So it normally somewhere between 30 to 50 years. So that is like when there is a hereditary background, it comes in a younger age group. The hypothyroidism, basically, I'm saying. In hyperthyroidism also, it is in the 20s to 30, a little younger age group that it manifests. But age itself actually is a very strong risk factor for hypothyroidism, in the sense there is lack of self-tolerance. There is a tendency for more antibody production, recognizing the body's cells as foreign. So age itself. But extreme ages are not a risk factor. It's not very commonly picked up. Beyond 70, we don't expect it to suddenly develop.
Commonly asked is, what is the relationship between stress and anxiety and thyroid issues? And particularly at this time right now, we have done our own in-house survey in MedLife, and you have a ton of other surveys also externally that has very clearly shown that people are a little more anxious and worried at this time because of this pandemic, right? So what is the relationship between stress and something like thyroid, and why does it happen so?
Okay. So stress it can be comparable to an immunosuppressive state, in the sense the body's immunity comes down with stress, be it emotional or any form of major physical stress. Stress is actually more strongly associated with hyperthyroidism, that is Graves' disease, which is the most common form of hyperthyroidism. So it is very much known, like a postpartum phase, any major, deprivation, like a death of a close one or something. The common association is seen when there are major emotional stress, deprivation. It can precipitate an event of hyperthyroidism. It can precipitate that. Of course, stress also plays a role in hypothyroidism. Again, postpartum, like there's a lot of stress, so thyroiditis is most commonly seen. But per se, with major stress, patients have not been followed longitudinally, prospectively. So most literature says there's more evidence required for this. So mostly it is observational. And recently, like I said, mentioned previously, that long working hours may be very much related to stress, is related to a lot of subclinical hypothyroidism being picked up. The borderline.
That stress is related to hypothyroidism, but very clearly there is clinical evidence that it is linked to hyperthyroidism, correct?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Doctor, the other question that a lot of people have is, let's say if I am a thyroid patient, what are the other issues that can arise due to this? Which are the other conditions that I need to be aware of and prepared for?
Look for associated other autoimmune diseases, autoimmune conditions, say type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, we call. So these autoimmune diseases and skin disorders, autoimmune disorders like vitiligo, they have a polyendocrine association. So it can, an aggregate like that. Otherwise, there is a close relation between hypothyroidism and diabetes. So now it's known, like it's more vice versa actually. Diabetics need to be tested for hypothyroidism. But most of these other diseases associated with thyroid illness manifest themselves very strongly, like they have very specific symptoms compared to hypothyroidism. So we really don't actually, screen for them, except in a particular type of patients, like say Turner syndrome, Down syndrome. They are chromosomal disorders where they have a strong tendency to have hypothyroidism. There can be a strong tendency to have a type 1 diabetes, which is autoimmune type of diabetes. So we specifically screen them. Otherwise, in the general population, we really don't screen. It is so common, and we really don't screen for associated. There's no very strongly associated conditions.
Got it. Then the next question: thyroid issues curable? Is there any chance for people to basically cure it and get on with life as normal before they contracted these conditions?
10% of hypothyroid patients, statistically are known to kind of reverse. So once we start, the requirement of thyroid hormone may reduce and we may be able to stop it. But then, interestingly, these patients eventually, after a few years, again become hypothyroid. So it's only a transient recovery phase. So very, very rarely when we have to start a very small dose, say for example in pregnancy, the requirement of thyroid hormone increases. So they really didn't have thyroid disease before, but it manifests in pregnancy. So we are able to discontinue it post-pregnancy. But then when the dose requirement is significant, at least more than 50% of their body weight requirement that we have, then it's more or less permanent. But curable in a sense in hypothyroidism, it is replacement. We don't really say it is treatment. We are not treating the condition. It is just that the thyroid has stopped producing that required thyroid hormone that is being produced in everybody else's body. So we are replacing it. So I really tell them like it is not, medicine. It is replacement. So you wake up in the morning and just take the tablet. It's like that. In hyperthyroidism, yes, it is curable, but but the problem is it can lead to sequelae. Hyperthyroidism, about 30% become permanently hypothyroid. With treatment, some people even without treatment, naturally they become hypothyroid. So be it surgery, be it antithyroid medication, or radioactive iodine therapy, the three types of treatment for hyperthyroidism. So there is a percentage of patients who become hypothyroid, and there is a percentage of patients who are resistant to treatment. So then we go aggressively, we have to take out the thyroid like surgery, they become permanently hypothyroid. So they'll have to take thyroxine tablets.
To step out for even the routine tests, right? So for a thyroid patient, what the recommended testing is once in 6 months, or is it once a quarter?
Yeah, so we recall the patient in 1.5 months. So later, once the dose is stabilized, once in 6 months, sometimes even once in a year is fine. If we have been able to estimate the dose and it stays stable over a period of time.
Great. So we know that there are a lot of these services. So MedLife also gives you home collection, which is much safer as compared to you stepping out and going to a path lab. But in case a customer is not comfortable, and indeed a lot of people aren't at this time, one question that has come up is, without blood tests, how do I know whether my thyroid is under control or not under control?
When the dose is not adequate, when they have a flare-up of hyperthyroidism, they start getting those typical symptoms. That is, the pulse rate goes up, they develop palpitations, sweating, they start losing weight. So it can be more prominent. But in hypothyroidism, there's really no way of being very sure, whether the dose is adequate. The symptoms are so non-specific, like fatigue, a feeling of low mood, and sometimes just tiredness, borderline weight gain. Actually, it's really not one top on the list for weight gain. So it's so non-specific that we recommend testing. Only thing, it's not such an emergency. We can push it at least for 2 months like that. In fact, for hyperthyroidism, the British Thyroid Association has brought up in the COVID the guidelines saying what we can do is like a block and replace regimen. In the sense, we give the antithyroid medication, along with that we give a thyroid tablet, so that patient don't become hypothyroid. We taper the dose in hyperthyroidism, but then there's no testing available. So to push it for another 3 months, they've brought out this new regime. They're suggesting that, but then it is not foolproof. So testing will be required at least once in 3 months.
Got it. So there is no escaping testing for people with those conditions. We would recommend that you go for your regular checkup unless it basically becomes larger than you have much more trouble over there. Thank you, doctor. That was most helpful for people And I'm sure by listening into this video, a lot of patients, the other question that they have is obviously about, what can one do on a regular basis in terms of, you know, controlling. Since you already told us that only 10% of hypothyroidism cases actually go through and even they relapse. It would be great to understand saying if there are three things that people should remember and do in order to control their thyroid condition, be it hyper or hypothyroidism, what would those three things be? Often, just stops processing it if you have like a laundry list of 20 things. But if you can give us three things, right, and only three things that all patients should do in order to maintain whatever is their condition with their thyroid gland, what would those be?
That is either hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. It's very much treatable and it is a necessary hormone. So there is nothing like a permanent cure. You need to be on it. It is replacement. So first of all, the treatment is ongoing. Usually it is ongoing till the doctor says you stop it. In case of hyper, but in hypo, it is ongoing. And compliance is very important. That is, patients should be very, very regular, be it hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. So in even one single dose per week, say 4 tablets, then it confuses us because it can alter the report. It's as good as taking say 90% of the dose. Of course, we do say if we miss one tablet, then you can take 2 tablets the next day in hypothyroidism, but it shouldn't be done too often. So every single dose is important. And thirdly, regular testing is a must. At least once in 6 months is definitely required. So if you have recently developed it, then 3 months is the maximum period of time you can delay, getting yourself tested.
Got it. So two things you said, doctor. First one, you said compliance is important, so follow the doctor's instruction in terms of your dosage and drugs. Second, you said testing is also important. You have to test yourself at least once in 6 months. What is the third point that you would want your patients to listen to?
Most questions that patients have is like they find it a stigma, and especially in the reproductive age group, women, they feel they can't conceive and all that. So they must understand that it is not a very unmanageable condition. They can lead a totally normal life with it, and they should not, when they travel they hide it and all that. It should not become a stigma. It's a very common condition and very much treatable. People can conceive with the right dose and all that. So I feel they should not stigmatize that, the relatives and all that specifically. It is just replacement of something slightly deficient, that's all.
That's such an important point, doctor, because I think a lot of stress also, which leads to a lot of other issues, is also caused because of this kind of mentality that not just you yourself, but also people around you have about various diseases. That is most helpful, doctor, and it has been so good to have you on our Medex talk this week. We hope to basically have you enlighten and advise a lot of our customers on MedLife and beyond, so that they can lead healthy, happier lives, and we are able to partner with these patients to make their lives and their overall outcomes much better. Yeah, thank you, doctor.